Tonight, a gentle story from the very end of a winter, long ago, about an old man and his wife, the house they made ready for the spring, and the small, faithful travellers they sat out one mild evening to welcome home. It was the first mild day after the long winter, and old Joss and his wife Nell felt the spring come back into the world, and knew it was time to get the house ready and to start watching the sky. All the long winter, the cold had kept them close indoors. The shutters drawn against the wind, the fire kept in, the world outside grey and hard and shut down. But this morning was different. There was a softness in the air that had not been there the day before, a mildness, a give. The worst of the cold had broken in the night, the way it does, all at once. After going on so long, you begin to think it never will. And when Joss opened the door and stood on the step and breathed it in, he knew, the way you know a thing in your body before your mind quite catches up to it, that the spring had turned at last. And that meant, as it meant every year, two things. It meant the house wanted opening up and airing out and making ready for the warm half of the year. And it meant the swallows were coming. For Joss and Nell had lived in this same old house their whole long married life, and every spring of all those years, and every spring long before them, in their parents' time, and their parents before that, the swallows had come back. They came from far away, from somewhere warm on the other side of the world. The small, dark birds with the long wings and the forked tails, flying an impossibly long way over land and sea to come back, every single spring, to this house, to the very same nests, the little cups of dried mud, tucked up under the edge of the roof, that the swallows built and mended and used again, year on year, family upon family, longer than anyone could remember. And they always came back about now, about the first mild evening, the first soft turn of the year. So it was time, Joss and Nell knew, to make the place ready and to watch. So they set about it, the two of them, in no hurry, but with a quiet gladness, the way you do a thing you have done happily together for 50 years. There was the long winter to sweep out of the house, and the shutters to open, and the spring to let in. And then, when all of that was done, there was the watching of the sky. They opened the house first. Joss went round and threw back all the shutters, one after another, that had been closed up tight against the winter, and the mild new light came pouring into the dim rooms, and the soft air came in with it, and the house, that had been shut and close and dark for months, seemed to wake up and breathe. Nell swept it through, every room, sweeping the long winter out the open door, the ash and the dust and the closed-up staleness of it. And they shook out the blankets in the fresh air and wiped the windows clear and let the spring into every corner of the house that the winter had held so long. It was good work, and they were glad of it, the way you are always glad of the first opening up of the year. They did not hurry over it. They were old, and there was no rush. And they had done it together so many springs that they moved around each other and the house without needing to speak, each one knowing what the other was about, the way two people do who have kept one house together for a whole lifetime. And when the house was open and swept and airing, they saw to the eaves. That was the important part, the part for the swallows. Joss took the long broom and gently cleared away the winter's cobwebs and dirt from up under the edge of the roof, around the old mud nests, clearing the way, not touching the nests themselves, only making sure that when the swallows came, they would find their old homes waiting there, and the way to them open and clean. He had done it every spring of his life. You made the place ready, and you left the nests be, and you let the birds find them as they always had. It was a small thing, but it was their part of it, the people's part, the keeping ready, and the birds would do the rest. It was while he was up at the eaves, looking at the empty nests, that Joss fell to remembering, the way he did every spring. The nests had been there longer than he had. The big one in the corner, under the peak of the roof, was the oldest, patched and added to, and used so many years that its mud had gone smooth and dark as old wood. And Joss could remember it being there when he was a boy, in his own father's time, with swallows in it then, as there would be in it now. He and Nell had watched the swallows come to these same nests the very first spring they were married, sitting out together on this same step, young then, with their whole lives ahead of them, and every spring since. And the swallows had kept coming, faithful, year on year, while the two of them grew old together beneath them, as though the birds and the people had a long, quiet arrangement between them, going back further than either could say. You keep the house, and we will keep coming back to it. There was a great deal of comfort in that, Joss had found, as the years went on. The world could be a changeable place, and a long life saw many things come and go that did not come again. But the swallows came back. Every spring, without fail, the small dark travellers returned out of the enormous world to this one small roof, to these same few nests, the way they always had and always would, long after Joss and Nell themselves were gone, and someone else kept the house. The swallows would still be coming home to these eaves. There was something in that a man could lean on, something faithful that came round again and could be trusted to keep coming round again, year on year, world without end. He climbed down from the eaves and put the long broom away and went to tell Nell that the eaves were ready. And then there was nothing left to do but wait for the evening and watch. The evening came on, soft and long, the first real evening of the spring. The light that all winter had failed so early stretched out now long and gold across the greening fields. In no hurry to go, the air stayed mild even as the sun went down, and the whole world had that washed, tender, just beginning feeling of the first warm evening after a long winter. Joss carried the old bench out from beside the door and set it where it always went, facing out across the yard and the fields and the wide, pale evening sky. And he and Nell sat down on it together to watch. This was the part they waited for. Not the work. The work was only to make ready. But this, to sit, the two of them, on the first mild evening, on their old bench by their old door, under the eaves with the empty nests above them, and watch the sky, and wait for the swallows to come home. Nell brought out a shawl against the last of the chill, and a little something warm to drink, and they sat close together, and did not talk much, and watched the high, pale sky go slowly gold, and then rose over the fields. They were not worried that the swallows might not come. They never came until they came, and they always came. 50 springs had taught Joss and Nell that you could not hurry it, and you did not need to fear it. Only sit and watch and be ready and trust the birds to do what birds had always done. So they sat, easy and content and certain. Two old people on a bench in the gold spring evening, their faces turned up to the wide sky, watching the high air over the fields for the first far speck of a wing. And then, at last, against the gold of the evening sky, there it was, a speck, far off and high, and then not a speck, but a bird, a single small dark bird, coming on fast over the fields, with the long sure wings, and the forked tail, and the swooping, dipping flight that could be nothing else in all the world. A swallow, the first swallow, home. It came on out of the high, far distance, over the greening fields, straight and certain, as though it had had this exact roof in mind across the whole long journey of half the world, which, in its way, it had. And it swept in low over the yard, and turned, and rose, and flickered up under the edge of the roof to the old nests. And it was back. Joss felt Nell's hand find his on the bench between them, and hold it, the way it did every year at just this moment. And he held it back. Neither of them said a word. There was nothing that needed saying. The first swallow was home, and even as they watched, there came another behind it, and then another. The small dark shapes appearing out of the gold evening, one after another, and swooping in, glad and tired and certain, to the eaves, home from the other side of the world, to the very same nests on the very first mild evening, exactly as they always had. Welcome back, Joss thought, watching them go up to the eaves above his head. Welcome home. We kept it ready for you. And the swallows, beginning their soft chatter now up in the old nests, settling in after their enormous journey, took no notice at all of the two old people on the bench below, and did not need to. For the welcome was not a thing that had to be said or heard. It was the open house, and the cleared eaves, and the kept nests, and the two faces turned up glad to the sky to see them come. It was the keeping ready itself. That was the welcome. And the swallows were home in it. And so the spring came back, the way it always did, to the old house and the old couple who had kept it ready for it. The two of them sat on a while longer in the last of the gold light, watching the swallows come and go above them, getting reacquainted with their old homes, chattering their small glad chatter under the eaves. And the evening deepened, soft and mild, toward the first gentle night of the spring. And there was, in the two old people sitting quiet on the bench beneath the returning birds, a contentment as deep and as simple as any in the world. For the long winter was over. The house was open to the year again, and the swallows were home. The faithful small travellers come back once more out of the whole wide changing world to this one small kept roof, the way they had every spring of Joss and Nell's lives, and their parents' lives, and would go on coming, spring after spring, long after them. The world had come round again, the way it could be trusted to, and all that the people had had to do, their small glad part in it, was to keep the place ready, and to sit out one mild evening, and to watch, and to welcome the travellers home. When the light was nearly gone, and the swallows had all settled to their nests for the night, Joss and Nell got up, a little stiff from the long sitting, and stood a moment looking up at the eaves, where the small dark shapes were quiet now in the old mud nests against the last of the sky. Then they went in, the two of them, into their swept and open and aired out house, with the spring come home above their door, and shut the door soft on the mild dark, and went to their rest, content, with the whole warm half of the year, and the swallows ahead of them. The swallows home at last, in the old nests under the eaves, quiet now against the last pale light. The empty winter swept away, the shutters thrown open, the whole house breathing the soft spring air, the old bench by the door, and the two who sat out to welcome the travellers home. And the spring come round again, faithful and sure, the way it always does, and the way it always will. The small birds settling, the mild dark coming gently down, and the long warm half of the year just beginning.